are we right? No, I just sat here for no reason. Are you
So
gonna say anything or?
yeah, we're live. This is happening. So hello and welcome everyone to the Spencer's Ventures podcast
Here,
number
scooch a smidge
56. Scooch where?
that direction, because I need to swing and I can't do it with the.
Okay.
Okay.
Podcast number 56. It is Thursday, June the 17th, and we're
Mm-hmm.
late, but what else is new? You guys are all right with that. Um,
Don't assume what
if
they're
you
all
are
right with.
if you are new around here, my name is Jen. This is my son Dan, who co-hosts the podcast with me, and occasionally one of the other kids will jump in. But mostly it's me and Dan doing the podcast. Um, yeah, so how are you, Dan? I hear you got a new job.
Yeah. I'd like to not talk about that on the podcast ever.
Okay. The color looks good.
Yeah, we're white as usual. I don't know what we were expecting here. I don't. I. Where was that? Where are we going with this? I don't know what you want from me. Anyway, no.
You know what I want.
I'm going to actually take a step out of the podcast for this one. We have a special guest. I feel like he should take the spotlight for the rest of the podcast.
What are you doing?
I don't like the way you said that. Anyway,
I'm just afraid.
what are you doing? You brought someone famous to my household? How dare you? MICKEYMOUSE Mickey Mouse.
My eye
Donald
itches.
Duck. We'll probably get striked for that. I won't continue, or get claimed for it. I shouldn't say striked.
Yeah, we don't get strikes, thank goodness.
Yeah, we know.
My eye really itches though.
Yeah, if we get a strike, we're in
Any-
actual trouble.
Anyway, so
Oh boy!
I know that the
Hiya, crew, and welcome to the podcast. Podcast, yeah. Hot dog. Oh boy! I hope you're all ready for this one. From now on, I do different impressions for the welcome. Like, man, welcome to the podcast.
Well, I think-
Podcast, yeah.
I think we're oh my gosh. We're occasionally going to need the real welcome. But, you know,
Welcome to the podcast. Podcast, yeah.
I'm making
There,
sure
you got a little variety pack there.
Yeah, I'm making sure our sound is
Yeah, you've
decent.
overchecked. I think you just really wanted to hear the Mickey a second time, and then now you're like, oh, well, I should make sure he didn't blow out the mic because I didn't just want to hear things again. Anyway, you give me cancer. Can we continue with the podcast?
Something happened here.
Morty, I'm podcast Rick. And it's not even a good Rick. I haven't heard his voice in forever. Jeez, Rick.
Okay, you're very weird.
No, I mean, I'm just.
I can't
I'm
really
doing-
tell from the
doing
phone whether or
voices.
not. If you are viewing
Is
this
this
live-
better? Is this better, guys? Do you enjoy this? Welcome to the podcast. Podcast, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, if you're joining us live, just let us know if the sound is okay. We definitely had some sound issues, and I think it was because the mic was too low. I'm hoping that it is high enough now.
I don't think anyone cares
I do because
They watched it anyway.
because when I try
They have watched every dumpster fire we've put on
that
this
is true.
channel.
That is true.
and
Well,
they
let's
haven't-
just get into.
They haven't said a freaking word.
Well, that's because they like watching the dumpster fire and just laughing at us.
They're sitting there like, I'll be up in the mic like this. Hi guys, and today, and it'll just go from that to, so guys today.
Yeah, right.
But at that volume the whole time, and then they'll be watching that and they're like, I enjoy. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Just don't do that. We have it set for a reason. It's at set fixed points.
Yeah, but I had turned it up, and when you go up onto the mic, it's going into the red.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, it matters to me. But anyway, okay, let's go. So, what are we talking about tonight? We're talking about
Loki. Because listen, all right, for those of you who have seen the new episode, you know.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
You're gonna watch the freaking series.
Okay, eventually I will.
There's no eventually on this.
Let me give a couple of updates. So, update number 1. When we were at the park on Saturday.
Wait, before we do anything else, what's in your cup?
Oh, what's in my cup?
Come here, Tick Tick.
Wawa coffee, of course.
I'm sorry, there's a cat here and I need him in my lap.
Oh my gosh, that poor cat.
Come here, Tick Tick.
You're
Yeah.
poor Tigger. Okay, so when we were at the park on Saturday,
you never run this fast.
yeah. When we were at the park on Saturday, we were surprised to see that there was no mask wearing on indoor rides and in the shops. I don't think that I didn't put that in the video. I did put it. It was in the video about the rides, the indoor rides, but it was not in the video about the shops. I did not update you guys on that, I don't think. It appears as if there's no more masks anywhere at Six Flags.
Yay.
I have not seen that, and I did forget to check if they updated their website or anything. But anyway, I would also just, if you're going to Great Adventure, I would just come prepared with a mask in your pocket just in case. But yeah, we didn't have to wear them anywhere. It was pretty amazing.
Okay.
The other update I have is, first of all, no more masks at Disney World except on Disney buses, the monorail, and the Skyliner. So everything else, all in the park, everywhere, rides, no more masks. Restaurants, everything. So that's fantastic news. Disney fireworks are coming back in July, which is really fantastic news. I just wish it had happened when we were there in January. Another update. Last week I announced that I was going to ride Jersey Devil Coaster 130 times by the end of the season.
Already backing out on that.
I think, no, I'm not backing out. I'm not backing out. I also mentioned it on the podcast. I've got 3 rides in, and a big part of that is because it keeps going down. There are a lot of people who have ridden it, 10, 15 times in a day. I have a hard time riding things back to back to back like that, so I need like a little bit of a break. So unfortunately, when I get off and take a little bit of a break, she goes down. And then I have to wait, and most of the time I leave the area and come back later, and, she was up, but now she's down again, and all of that. So I am still going to try to hit that 130, because I feel like they're going to get all of the kinks worked out, and in the fall, especially during Fright Fest, I should be able to get a ton of rides in. I am hoping. Hey, if I don't make it, it's a fun challenge, but if I don't make it, I don't make it, but I am going to shoot for that 130 by the end of the season.
Now, I have a topic for tonight, right? And it'll take up a good half of the podcast minimum, depending on how long we actually talk about it.
I want to real quick. So next week, there should be a podcast.
Where's the?
It may just be. What do you need?
I need that.
This?
Yep.
Okay. It may just be Dan. It might be both of us. Not sure, because Dan is staying home while the rest of the family is going away. So we'll be leaving next week for a week in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. So there's going to be lots and lots of vlogs when we come back. So you'll be seeing those in July. And when we are away, there may or may not be a podcast. Hopefully, I will be joining you live. I know that when we had tried that before from Great Adventure, the when I watched it back, it didn't. The sound was not. It was not working well. So worst case scenario, I will try to join you live from Tennessee in 2 weeks, even if it's just on the phone. So, and Dan will be here manning everything else. Good. So there is a possibility that the next 2 weeks it'll just be Dan, or maybe nothing at all, or
It'll most likely.
who knows?
It'll probably be just me.
It's gonna be.
Who knows how this will work out?
Yeah.
But there'll be something. There will be something.
Okay, so he says there will definitely be something
of a length.
Yeah.
Now, all right. She has no clue what I've sneakily prepared.
Yeah, I don't know what he's doing.
Now, I'm only going to play the audio because I don't feel like setting up the video for you guys, and it adds a little bit of confusion, actually, due to some editing mistake, or illustration mistakes. That's the word I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all you need to know for this is, and I want you to stay pretty blind, too. This takes place in Japan. It's real events. It's not, like, made up or anything. The YouTuber this video is made by is Kento Bento. I've heard his other videos aren't really that reliable, but I know this one's legit, 100%. So I've seen this like 1,000 times. I'm more so curious what her reaction will be here, but it's super interesting. I'm gonna try and play the audio through the mic here.
I'm Kento Bento.
That was his intro.
This video was made possible
Nope.
because Yoshie Shiratori had had enough. He was forced to confess to a murder he did not commit, falsely imprisoned in Aomori prison, beaten and tortured every night by prison guards, and, now worse, prosecutors were seeking the death penalty. In his mind, it was time to go, but Aomori prison wasn't the easiest to escape. Regardless, Yoshie Shiratori had nothing to lose, and so at 5:30 a.m., he made his move. He knew there would be a 15-minute gap in the patrol time, as he had studied the guard's routine for months. And when the coast was clear, he pulled out a metal wire which he had smuggled in from the bathhouse and started to pick the lock. This was originally the metal support ring that was wrapped around the bathing buckets inmates used to wash themselves. His hands were stiff from the wintry cold, but after a few minutes of picking, he had success, and his cell door swung open. But he wasn't out of the woods yet, because there were more locked doors ahead. He knew he only had a few minutes left before the guards would return, and so he wasted no time attempting to pick his way through the remaining security doors. Now, fortunately for him, he was able to make it out of the facility, but the bad news was that he was only halfway to freedom. You see, he was still well within the search perimeter, which meant at any moment the alarm could go off and he'd still be caught. At 5:45 a.m., the guards returned, peering into his cell, and this is what they saw. Shiratori sound asleep in his futon bed. But of course, what they didn't realize was that they were looking at something else. A pile of loose floorboards underneath his duvet designed to trick them. It wasn't until the next morning that they finally discovered the truth and the alarm was sounded. But by then, Shiratori was long gone. Now, he had escaped, but if you've watched any of our previous videos, you'll know that things aren't always as they seem. In fact, for Yoshie Shiratori, aka the prison break magician, this was only the beginning. 3 days later, he was caught trying to steal supplies from a hospital, and just like that, he was back in the slammer. But this time, for his escape attempt, he was sentenced to life in prison. He would never be with his family again, his wife and his daughter, and all the months of planning had led to just 3 days of freedom. It now seemed he'd be locked up for a very long time. 6 years later, in 1942, in the midst of the Second World War, Shiratori found himself transferred to Akita prison in Akita City. There, the guards treated him even worse than in Aomori. They had heard about Shiratori's previous escape and were determined to make an example out of him. They wanted to make sure he would never escape again. Along with the usual beatings, he was forced to partake in extreme manual labor, made to sleep on the hard concrete floor in the severe winter cold. and placed into solitary confinement for extended periods of time. Now, this was a specially made solitary confinement cell, which was very small and had a very high ceiling, with the walls covered with copper sheets so smooth that it was impossible to grip. In addition, there was almost no sunlight even in the daytime, with the only window light coming from a small sealed skylight high above. This was a room designed to keep escape artists from escaping, and if that wasn't enough, the guards also made sure that Shiratori was handcuffed at all times. Now, despite the constant abuse, one of the guards, Kobayashi, in fact the head guard, took pity on him. Kobayashi never laid a finger and even seemed to check up on him from time to time, concerned for his well-being. Perhaps this made life a little more bearable for Shiratori, and it might have even been what kept his will alive all the way to the night of June 15th. It was a stormy night, and Shiratori was in the middle of one of his extended stays in solitary confinement. At around midnight, one of the guards peered into his cell and couldn't believe his eyes. He opened the cell door and looked around in astonishment, as Yoshie Shiratori had vanished into thin air. All that was left was his handcuffs. So how did he do it? Well, there were a few assumptions the guards made that did not apply to Shiratori. For one, handcuffs simply didn't work on him. Shiratori was actually a master of getting out of handcuffs, and in fact had several methods to choose from. Here, he decided to go with the familiar lock-picking method, but he really could have gone with any of them. He had thoroughly scoured his surroundings to find anything that could be of use in an escape, and just like in Aomori prison, he was able to uncover a loose bit of wire. Perhaps it was from one of the items Kobayashi brought him, but this wasn't clear. After freeing himself from the cuffs, he placed his palms and soles of his feet on the smooth copper sheets and started climbing the unclimbable wall. It turned out Shiratori was also an expert climber, with an uncanny ability to scale like a lizard. Once he reached the skylight above, he noticed that, yes, the window was sealed, but the wooden framing around it was starting to rot. And so thereafter, night after night, when the guards weren't looking, he'd climb the copper walls and loosen the framing, bit by bit. Afterwards, he'd climb back down and place the handcuffs back on, as to not rouse suspicion. After a couple months, the window finally came loose, and from there, it was just about choosing the right day. He waited until a particular stormy night, so the guards wouldn't hear the footsteps on the roof. And that was it. He had escaped from prison again. Now this time, he wouldn't be caught. Or, at least, not in the way you'd expect. 3 months later, on September 18th, the head guard, Kobayashi, was at home when he heard a knock on the door. To his surprise, it was the fugitive Yoshie Shiratori, unkempt and disheveled, and he needed a favor. A stunned Kobayashi took him in and fed him, all the while listening to what he had to say. Shiratori explained that he didn't actually mind being in prison, and that the only reason he escaped twice now was due to the tremendous abuse he suffered at the hands of the sadistic guards. Kobayashi, however, was the only one who treated him with any amount of respect, and so he felt he owed it to him to let him in on his grand plan. Now, this plan involved Shiratori willingly, yes, handing himself over to the Justice Department, where he could then personally make a case for how corrupt and barbaric the Japanese prison system was, and there needed to be reform. He wanted to campaign for change, and in the process, gain his legal freedom through a civil lawsuit. He felt this was the only way he could realistically end up with his family. This, of course, was a super ambitious plan, and as a fugitive on the run, he was well aware of that, which is why he needed Kobayashi, the well-respected head guard of Akita prison, to vouch for him, to strengthen his credibility. As the only guard who ever treated him right, he had a feeling Kobayashi would do the right thing. Minutes later, while Shiratori was in the toilet, Kobayashi called the police. Maybe not a great plan. Just like that, Shiratori was back in prison, and this time, he vowed never to trust an officer of the law again. For the second escape, the courthouse added 3 more years to his life sentence. Now, Shiratori requested to be sent to a Tokyo prison, where the weather was warmer, as he couldn't stand the cold in the northern prisons. His previous stints had weakened him severely, but he was denied his request. Instead, the judge sentenced him to the infamous Abashiri prison in Hokkaido, the northernmost prison in Japan. No man had ever escaped from this wintry hellhole of a prison. It was now 1943, and the cold was unbearable in Abashiri, as the temperature in the cells was below freezing point. Whenever inmates received their prison food, the miso soup and soy sauce would often freeze up. In this temperature, a handcuffed Shiratori was thrown into an open cell in summer clothing, and he immediately felt the paralyzing sting of cold air. Perhaps in a fit of desperation, he tried to force himself past the guards, but they were able to push him back and beat him down. An enraged and defiant Shiratori stood back up and vowed that he would escape from Abashiri prison, like he's always done, and that there was nothing they could do about it. In fact, he claimed there was little point even putting handcuffs on him, as he'd always find a way to break free. If not by lockpicking, then, well, this. He then proceeded to rip apart the chain of his handcuffs, to the horror of the guards. It turned out Shiratori had another special ability. Aside from his outstanding climbing abilities, he also possessed incredible strength, almost superhuman strength. Back in Akita prison, he could have broken free of the cuffs the physical way if he didn't have to put them back on. Now, this was impressive, but it wasn't so smart to lay his cards on the table like that, as the guards were starting to build an escape profile on him. They knew he had lockpicking abilities, lizard-like climbing abilities, and now almost superhuman strength. And so they set out to devise the ultimate escape-proof cell, one that was sure to be Shiratori-proof. And they came up with this. The new cell had steel fixtures with a low chance of rot. Any openings, even the bars removed, were made smaller than his body, meaning there was no way he could physically fit through. He had specially made solid iron handcuffs that tied his hands behind his back, and leg cuffs that made him barely able to stand. These cuffs weighed 20 kgs each and had no keyhole, which meant they could not be lockpicked. And the only way they could be removed was by two metalwork specialists who would come once every few weeks to remove them in an arduous 2-hour process. It was at this point, and only this point, that he could even take a bath. And he certainly needed one, as weeks of being shackled up with no movement meant his cuff wounds were infested with maggots. On top of that, and as cold as it had already been, it wasn't even peak winter yet. Any strength he would have left would surely be nullified by the upcoming freeze. Though just in case, they still made sure to cut his already meager food portions in half. And so that was it. Even for Shiratori, this was too much. As winter came, he succumbed to his fate. Every day, the guards would slide his meal through the opening, and he'd be forced to grovel like a dog. His hand and leg cuffs made every action awkward and uncomfortable, with even sleeping being a pain. There was no doubt life in Abashiri prison was absolute torture. Now, fast forward. Shiratori was somehow able to survive through the winter, and spring was coming. This meant he was starting to get his strength back. But still, what could he really do? He was literally in a bind. Months passed and, well, nothing seemed to happen. Then one night, in August, a guard in his office was doing some paperwork when he heard some shuffling on the roof. He wasn't sure what it was, but he decided to check on the prisoners. As he looked inside Shiratori's inescapable cell, he was stunned. The futon bed and prison garments were neatly folded up. The specially made 20 kg handcuffs and leg cuffs that would have required two specialists 2 hours to remove was placed on the side, and Shiratori was nowhere to be seen. He had finally fulfilled his promise to the guards. The alarm immediately sounded, but despite the work of the search party, it seemed he had truly disappeared. But how on earth did this happen? How did he escape from the fortress that was Abashiri prison? Well, preparation had started 6 months earlier. At the time, he didn't have the strength or stamina to mount any sort of escape, not to mention the restraints he was in. But one thing he did have was time and patience. Every day, the guards would slide his meal through, and while he struggled to eat his food off the floor, he always made sure to save a little bit of the miso soup in the corner. You see, every night, he would hobble awkwardly to the inspection window and splash a little of it on the steel frame. He would also dab some on his handcuffs and leg cuffs. Now, his intention was for the salt content of the miso soup to oxidize the screws and bolts, eventually corroding and loosening it. After a month, this technique of rusting through the iron actually worked, and the first screw came out. The next few months saw screws and bolts coming loose, assisted by the use of the first screw as a sort of screwdriver. By the end of spring, he was able to fully remove his handcuffs and leg cuffs, as well as the steel frame of the inspection window. But there was a problem. The size of the opening was smaller than his body, which meant he couldn't fit through, a contingency thought out by the guards. What they didn't account for, though, was Shiratori's fourth ability, which involved being able to dislocate his joints at will. With this, he was now able to slide through the opening like a caterpillar, this repertoire of skills thus surely making him an honorary member of the X-Men. With that, he climbed through a broken window in the roof and vanished. Impressively, Shiratori had now escaped from 3 prisons, as well as being the only man to ever escape Abashiri prison. Now, good on him for escaping, but this was northern Hokkaido, and the only direction he could have gone to was the cold, snowy mountains. Actually, the prison guards felt that they had the last laugh, because...
Alright, so right here, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Basically, he goes into the personal life of the family a little bit. Long story short, he goes into a self-imposed solitude for a little bit. This was during World War II, and his wife was basically just secretly hoping the Americans would win, so that he could be forgotten about basically and come home. He eventually comes home, slowly down from the mountains into this nearby village. Upon doing so, he gets into a fight with a farmer, though, who thought he was actually a local thief, and winds up killing the man in self-defense, and gets sentenced to prison again because of that scenario. And this time, obviously, made more of an example out of him, or attempted to.
In fact, had the infamous Yoshie Shiratori in their custody. For his multiple escapes and having now murdered the farmer, despite his claims of self-defense, he was sentenced to death by the district court of Sapporo. And in 1947, he was sent to Sapporo prison to await execution. Now, to ensure he wouldn't escape this time while on death row, he was placed under 24-hour surveillance, with 6 armed guards personally assigned to his watch. As for the cell itself, it was upgraded further from the one in Abashiri prison, with reinforced doors, ceilings, bars, windows. In fact, any openings were made smaller than the size of his head, not just his body, learning from the Abashiri escape, as while he may be able to dislocate his joints, he certainly can't dislocate his skull. As long as his head can't fit, they were good. The 6 guards were so confident, in fact, that they didn't even bother cuffing him. Now, Shiratori was getting old, and the odds of escaping by this point were looking slim. As his execution loomed near, there was little he could really do, and the guards knew that. They could see the desperation on his face, looking up, searching for an escape plan that they knew would never come. Though, still, just in case, they made sure to search his room every night while he was taking a bath in the bathhouse, inspecting the ceiling, skylight, and any other openings. A month passed, and winter was now coming, weakening him further, and the realization was starting to dawn on him. He grew increasingly despondent, staying in bed, refusing to wake up, despite the orders of the guards. This went on for a while, until one morning, the guards had enough and entered the cell to discipline him. They flipped over the duvet, and he was gone. This was not possible. How did he do it this time? Going back to when he was first placed under 24-hour surveillance, with the 6 armed guards personally assigned to his watch, he had in fact conditioned them to look up and keep up from the very start. Not just because his previous escape attempts involved climbing through skylight windows on ceilings, but also his suspicious yet, as it turned out, very intentional behavior of constantly looking up to figure out an escape plan. Little did they know, it was all an act, and that he already had one, but it would be taking place precisely where they weren't looking. You see, it turned out the authorities were so concerned with him escaping through a window or skylight that they neglected to reinforce the bottom. This ironically ended up being his easiest and simplest escape, because all he had to do was remove the bolted floorboards, which wasn't easy, but he had experience, and using random cutlery and a miso soup bowl, dig his way to freedom. This took over a month, and he was able to hide his activities due to A, the guards not suspecting this approach, and B, the floorboard panels being put back in place every night after digging. The 6 guards thought they were keeping a good eye on him, even at night, but with the hole consistently positioned underneath the futon and duvet, and it increasingly becoming the norm to refuse the orders of the guards to wake up, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Placing a pile of loose floorboards underneath the duvet to trick them was also a callback to his first prison escape in Aomori. So, he had now escaped from prison for...
Okay, and that's basically where that ends. What happens immediately after that is he winds up running into a cop at a police station. he tries to play it cool, and the cop, not knowing who he is, gives him a cigarette, which at the time was it was a luxury item in Japan, and therefore this kind of gave him some overwhelming emotions concerning the abuse he had been through via police and just all the things. So he winds up confessing, all in all, and a lot of people probably suspect it due to being the fact that the Americans had heavily overhauled the Japanese police force and the judicial system and all that, but he wound up actually getting everything he wanted, in that when he gave himself in, they took into account that he never hurt anyone during his escapes. They got rid of the life sentences. They recognized the death of the farmer as a legitimate case of self-defense, and due to what originally got him in there, which was basically police brutality and his quote-unquote friends throwing him under the bus for something he didn't do, they couldn't let him off completely scot-free because it was too ambiguous. So they only gave him 20 years or 23 years, whatever it was. And from that point, and they approved his transfer to Tokyo. So all in all, he wound up getting pretty much everything he wanted. There's reform, etc. So I'm just curious as to you, if there's anything there you were questioning. So I wonder if just hearing the audio kind of fixed what a lot of people were questioning about those stories, or about that story.
I don't know. It's a story of a guy that escaped a lot.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. They actually even have like a museum of one of the prisons with a statue of him up in the rafters.
So he's a famous Japanese escaped artist.
Pretty much. When it came to that story, a lot of people were wondering how he actually, where all the dirt went, because the way it was illustrated was the foundation directly on the dirt. So a lot of people were like, well, hey, but obviously there's space underneath. And, just certain other little things like that. A lot of people were questioning, how was he even able to break the cuffs? I mean, that's pretty rough. But then, you explain the fact that, this was, however long ago, it was in Japan.
Right, it was in the 40s.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily made with, the strongest stuff. And he was known to be, pretty strong on top of that. So it was very likely that he would just snap it along the weak link. A lot of people were questioning, why wouldn't the iron workers, notice the rust on the handcuffs and stuff? It's just because it was only on the screws, and to most people's understanding, the way they actually took the cuffs off was by cutting the iron itself, just breaking the cuffs themselves, and then I assume blowtorching it together. So there's a lot surrounding that. He's typically seen as an anti-hero kind of a deal in Japan. Which is a really cool thing. Well, because there's a huge stigma around having a relative in prison in Japan. It's just not good for you.
I wish you hadn't sprung this on me, because I'm sitting here going, what does this have to do with anything?
Does it have to do with anything? No.
I am like...
It does, it's something different.
It's very different.
It's just, I'm like, hey, we don't need to sit here and say the same 3 sentences every night, so I fixed that.
What, Jersey Devil Coaster?
If I hear you say the name of that one more time, I might hire somebody.
JDC?
I may hire somebody to murder everyone in this house if I hear the name of that coaster.
It's the It's
one
the
more
big
time.
news, though.
Okay,
It's the big thing.
you're like I said, you crave that more than a meth addict needs meth.
No.
And yes, uh, and, and you wonder.
That is untrue.
That is very true. You
Um,
could ask the meth addict next door.
So Dan I actually just ordered another one. It's not exactly the same, but it's the same maker. Because I'm not sure where the other tripod got to.
Mm-hmm.
If I find it, great. But if not, now we have another one coming so that you will be able to use one here when I'm away if you need to put the phone up
Gotcha.
to it. And I would turn the phone directly into
The mic.
the mic.
Also, real fast before we go further down this, I'm curious what everyone at home, write in the comments. Let me know what you thought of that story yourselves. I always find that to be like one of the crazier things that are related to that. Also, like I said, just to make sure he gets his proper kudos, Kento Bento. So if you want to look him up, that's his YouTube channel. It's all illustrated stuff. It seems to be a very Japanese heavy channel, but not an issue. Just a heads up. So
And
if you liked that, check them out.
Also, when I am away, try to make sure you're talking directly because
Yeah,
the sides
I-
aren't going to pick it up. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, I mean, I would
Okay,
have a
no,
different
I'm
setup.
just yeah. But definitely turning when I turned the phone to it. The only thing that would have made it better is if the bottom
Sure.
where it was coming, it
Yeah,
would
yeah.
have. So, but that it wasn't bad. It was pretty good, I think. Now if I try to watch this back later and the sound is crap, I am not going to understand. I mean, I've put the mic up. I tried to listen to it here myself. I don't know
Yeah.
what the heck.
Whatever.
Try to keep our sound.
What does
going.
this have to do with anything?
I don't know. It's just
Exactly.
podcast sound stuff.
Exactly, and now you understand. So,
Oh, another piece
uh-oh.
of great adventure news that I'm sure most of you have heard about. I wish that I had remembered to say it earlier because by now you guys have been like, "Pfft, what are they talking about?" But, and I don't know if you heard this or not, the log flume, one of the logs tipped over on its side and 2 people had to go to the hospital.
Yeah, I mean, I heard one of them died. I don't know how true that one is, but
Nobody died.
like I said, I only heard that, but
No, nobody died from that. They were bumped a little bit. That was.
I mean,
it
to be
wasn't-
fair, you say it like it's impossible for someone to die at Six Flags.
They didn't die.
I know, but you say it like it's impossible.
Okay, well that didn't happen. So I guess the log flume will be closed until the state can come back out and
Probably.
what am I saying? Inspect it again.
Evaluate it.
I mean, a lot of people are saying, well, they must have been rocking the boat for that to happen, but they had just come down the hill.
It's probably a fault. The sensor probably didn't trip because I
And
believe there's 2 on that.
Well, apparently it would have had to have gone really fast because it comes down and then goes. It actually must
Was
have
it front loaded?
come up. I don't know. It must have come up because it hit part of the guardrail, and then and it was just on its side before it made it back into the station. So yeah, I mean, it could have been loaded poorly.
Yeah, that's probably what it was. Because I think
That's really scary, though.
So it's scary, but you can't say you think somebody died.
No, nobody died. It wasn't truthful. You need to stop saying things like that. But it's still scary. If I'm on that thing and all of a sudden it tips over
I don't know.
and I'm hitting my head and stuff, no.
Yeah. I don't know what you want me. You're looking at me like you want me to give you my freaking resume. Like you
don't
want
know.
you want me to put it like, here's my thesis. Will you accept me to Harvard now?
Anyway,
I don't know, man. Like, wait, what do you want me to add to that?
I don't know.
Ooh, scary
Nothing.
log, scary
Nothing.
log, go boom and tip and Like, I don't know,
Anyway,
it's dumb.
so
This is so old.
there is a possibility that we will be heading out to Great Adventure tomorrow evening. So look for a vlog. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll go tomorrow evening. Because I
going
really don't want to
insane.
go out on the weekend if I can help it. We'll see what happens.
I'm losing my mind.
Why?
Because I'm stuck here just listening to Six Flags nonsense.
I just had to listen to a Japanese escape artist.
You had to listen to one thing.
For 20 minutes.
Oh my god. Oh wait, you
We're
watch
supposed to be-
NCIS.
we're
That is a
supposed to be
2-hour
talking-
long episode.
This is the podcast. We're supposed to be talking about things. And we weren't. We were
NCIS
something.
is a 2-hour-long episode, 1-hour-long
Oh
episode.
my gosh, you're so dumb.
The episodes for NCIS are 1 hour long, and you couldn't spend 20 minutes listening to something.
But you sprung it on me. And them.
Everything we do, we spring on them.
Well, that's true.
What kind of fences are you pulling out here?
That's kind of true.
This is
But
like
they come here expecting to hear,
But
things
Your
about our
Honor,
adventures.
They don't expect anything from us.
Well, I kind of hope not, because if you're expecting anything from us, you'll be disappointed.
Your Honor, I had to kill him. I had to. You don't understand.
Okay, do we have
He made me eat a piece of popcorn.
Do we have anything else to discuss?
I think I'm schizophrenic after
I mean,
this
it's supposed to be a discussion,
Well, I was hoping we could discuss that, but apparently
but there was nothing to discuss. In
the
my opinion, there wasn't.
The insanity of that alone is just so impressive. The fact that someone can break out of jail 4 separate times, and one of them was using a miso soup bowl to dig underneath the floorboards is ridiculous.
I
So
guess.
he had to, they were bolted floorboards.
Yeah,
How
but
the hell did he unbolt the floorboards?
I don't know.
That's what.
Who knows?
I don't know how he did this thing. That's not noteworthy. When you're talking about
A potential convict.
Please don't yell directly into the mic like that. But anyway,
you look like you're coping from loss of JDC.
no,
I need my fix.
no. I'm just trying to go somewhere.
Oh, to go to JDC? Caught you. Red-handed.
No, I need red-handed. Stop shaking the table. What is wrong with you?
I need my fix.
Stop. I mean, you want to talk about prison escapes, like, I'm sure we could do some research on that and talk about some escapes. How about the escapes from Alcatraz? Some pretty interesting stuff right there.
I guess I'm gonna go to those to go look up specific ones now.
Well,
the reason I wasn't even planning on doing this one until I realized it wouldn't really fit into like the DB Cooper style podcast we were talking about. So I'm like, I'll just do it now.
well, the patience of people who escape is amazing.
Oh, it's through the roof.
Because
through
it
the
takes forever
Well,
to plan it out, to do your digging and all
Yeah.
of that stuff.
So that last break he did with the miso soup bowl, that was 6 months of preparation. On death row at that. So he was under a time limit and he still made it work. That's a lot of stress. And also like the cunning on the second escape to pick his cuffs, climb up a slat of copper, and slowly jiggle bars free, go back down, put on the cuffs, and just act like nothing happened consistently for I think it was like 2 months. That's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just certain things that are wow. there was. I'm trying to remember the specifics because otherwise I don't want to mention it. But there's one particular case that's really interesting. Or here, this was an unsolved case, which I just find insane that it was pulled off. And this was like a 3 or 4 month operation that was, executed. But basically, there's a very large bank in Japan. I know this from this guy. Very large bank in Japan. And the dude who was executing this plan sent a note with, paper clippings cut out for, the note. Sent it to the owner of the bank's house saying, like, hey, I'm gonna blow your house to smithereens with TNT. And like 3 months later, when there's a drop-off being done, basically he used all this paranoia, dressed up as a cop, stopped the people that were, doing the bank run, and like, your boss's house just blew up, you need to come with me, this isn't safe, and somehow sneakily lit a flare and tossed it under the car to emulate the car smoking. And in doing so, he's like, get out of the way, rolled out of the way. Everyone ran around the corner of this brick wall that was there waiting for this car to explode. And meanwhile, he drove off with this entire bank's just, deposit.
Okay, why is everything that you're bringing up tonight happen in Japan?
I've brought up 2 things, so I haven't.
Yeah, but
and I brought up DB Cooper, which happened in America, so eat it. That's a 33% USA thing.
Okay.
But I figured we'd save DB Cooper specifics for another time and do that as like unsolved mysteries podcast. But this is more just to whet the palate of the people for when we inevitably do some. Oh, here's a bunch of unsolved mysteries. I'm thinking we do like the 5 Dyatlov Pass, DB Cooper. There's another big one that I can't remember.
I only recognize one of those.
DB Cooper. Okay. Yeah, I mean, 2 of those. One of those takes place in the mountains. The other one takes place in winter, which is why I almost said mountains. Very, very, very interesting cases.
Well, maybe we could try to come up with, one a month or one every other month.
That'd be interesting.
Something like that.
That'd be interesting. Like I said, I would love to do Dyatlov. I can't say it right now. I don't know why. Dyatlov Pass. That one's really interesting.
Or maybe that would be something that we do January through March.
Yeah, something like that.
Because we'll need topics.
Sure.
At that time.
Sure.
But
I'm sure there'll be some sort of dry period.
Yeah, I mean, because in the fall, it's going to be Fright Fest and Holiday in the Park.
That might be. I mean, I'm sure during the podcast there'll be a week or 2 in there where we have little to talk about. Mm-hmm. That might be the perfect time to slot one of those in. It's with the theme and
well, as long as we have it researched and stuff. Yeah. So
there's some people. Actually, I want to make sure I pronounce this right, but I think it's Lemino. Phenomenal for that kind of a thing. If you guys are interested in like not really missing persons, but like unsolved mysteries. Oh, it's Lemino.
Yeah, I like missing person type stuff, like
Lemmmino for those of you who are interested.
Where?
On YouTube. Awesome stuff. He did a very comprehensive breakdown of the DB Cooper case. He did, Dyatlov Pass, funny enough. But, yeah, he's done some very, very interesting ones. There, we could do the flight of 397, or 370, not 397. I don't know why I threw a 9 in there. But, there are tons of little things I wouldn't mind. By the way, with the DB Cooper case, I know this is kind of going into what I didn't want to go into right away, but you remember the details, I'm sure, from the really. Well, this is very interesting. I might know more about something along those lines.
I mean, for right now, like, I didn't know that we would be discussing it, so I didn't research.
Yeah, but like the basic outline, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's all you really need to know for this random little theory. Because the more and more I hear the specific details, especially, I kind of just wonder if the flight crew were supposed to be a part of the heist, and when he jumped, he was cutting them out of the deal, and they had to keep playing along with it. Otherwise, everyone would know they were involved directly, and they didn't want to risk the jail time. Because there were just certain details in that I'm sitting there, I'm like, why were you so complicit? Like, it almost seemed like you were kind of like, oh, yeah, take the money, go for it. Like, all right, funny enough, this is going back to Japan for a brief moment, but it's more Korean.
And then
yeah,
I think we're about done.
But I don't know why. This just reminded me of a case where a bunch of Japanese, like, high school students basically band together, and they're like, nope, we want communism. How are we going to prove it? By hijacking a plane and flying that to North Korea. Well, the U.S. government had to get involved because the CEO of Pepsi was on that plane, and some other U.S. citizens, of course. But that was, one of the notable ones. And there were some, like, Japanese dignitaries, if I'm not mistaken, on there. So there were two countries trying to cooperate with each other from a long distance, and they basically did this three-way scamming on these guys by saying, you know what, here's go to North Korea, go for it. And they tricked them in going to South Korea with the help of South Korea, and they masked the entire landing area with North Korean merchandise and, like, a cheering squad. They went all out on this, and then they captured them and were like, yeah, you guys suck. That was, but it was just really, really interesting that they were in, like, an hour's time set up, like, this parade, and they took down any signs of South Korea and put up North Korean propaganda. Like, it was insanity. So yeah, three massive countries had to come together to save Pepsi. No one cared about anyone else on the plane. It was just the Pepsi CEO.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I'm sure that got blown off at some point. I always find it, like, somewhat interesting that, funny. All right, again, slightly off topic. Funny enough, there was no topic. No, one of the teens was a part of a startup band, at the time, and he probably would have been really successful had he not just thrown his life away doing this. But
nice.
When I was listening to that, I really wonder if a company called something Project CD Red had used that character as inspiration for Cyberpunk, which is a newer game and whatever. Because one of the main characters in that fits that particular person to a T. He's part of a rock band and wound up trying to, start a regime, basically, and people looked at him as a terrorist. So I'm really curious if they use that as inspiration. But that'd be a really random source to pull inspiration from. Hey, remember that one time a plane was hijacked?
Nice. All right, I think that is going to do it for this.
One more tiny itty bitty thing.
Weeks.
I'm really sorry, but this is actually really important to that story, though, and it'd do it injustice not to mention it real fast. at the time that the plane jacking had occurred, nobody was panicked for like the first 5 to 10 minutes because at the time it wasn't illegal to hijack planes.
Okay.
Which just seems a little odd to me that it would ever not be illegal to hijack.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. That just I had to toss that in there because I thought that was a little bizarre that at some point. Oh boy.
Okay, so that is gonna do it for another podcast.
Wait. This is the end of the podcast, and just so you guys know, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell because the subscription button doesn't really do anything else if you don't press that button.
And I totally forgot to mention that at the beginning, so I'm an idiot.
Make sure you share the podcast.
Well, you might not want to share all the podcasts
Share them all.
because,
Share them.
dumpster fires happen around here often. Yes, so please, if you are new around here, please subscribe. I got to get better about mentioning that in the beginning. But anyway, we will see you guys. Well, at least he will see you next week. I might still see you next week.
Next week we're gonna have a very
kind of up in the air still.
Yeah, next week we're gonna have a very central opening to the podcast.
So you guys have a great weekend.
Candles.
Have a great week. If you didn't see our last vlog, go check that out. And keep your eyes open. There might be another one this weekend, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And in July, within the first half of July, you guys are going to get a lot of Tennessee vlogs. You're going to get our vacation week. We're going to, we've got a lot of things planned, and there will be a lot of vlogs coming out to you, from our Tennessee trip, and I'm really excited about it. So that is it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed it, or at least tolerated it. We love you. We'll see you